welcome back to the podcast.
There, we have that capability, but you used it once last time at the very beginning.
I forgot. I mean, at one point I knew most of them were.
What else do you have on here? That's pretty. Those are all pretty cool. Oh, is that Ben?
That is Ben.
A special.
And we'll be right back after
These are all really good. It reminds me of the Age of Empires 2. You remember? You know, like King of the Losers and like shit like that. It was like actual like staff voiced taunts that were like in game. Those fucking kicked ass. They were really funny.
Nice.
Yeah, it's good shit.
We finished the movies.
You finished all of them?
No, we didn't.
No.
Okay. I was about to say, like,
Unfortunately, our fans will have to wait until next.
I don't know if we can talk about it anymore. I was literally for the last couple hours I've been editing the episodes and I'm almost
How's the
done.
sound? I was worried because we were so close
sound was
together.
perfect. Sound
Really?
was just fine.
I thought
there was no
I thought
problem.
like you would pick up me on different mics and it would be weird.
Oh no! It was all
okay,
good.
that's clear. That must be the headphones then. It made it seem like.
Yeah, I think that's probably what it was. But I had to cut out like a good part of it. I was able to keep in a lot of it, but there was parts that I just like. There's no way. The more specific parts, where it's less about here's what he did and more like he did. Here's exactly the steps that he took.
Yeah.
Like unfortunately, the whole fishing net thing.
The fishing net is a bit much in any format.
Right. But the absurdity of it is just. It's so absurd, you know, that I really wanted to keep it in, but I couldn't. I couldn't do it. I was stumped.
Good.
You are the most bleeped person on my podcast.
Oh my
Well, because you had me explain it.
Oh, that's true.
There's a couple times where it'll literally just be like it'll be us talking stuff that you interject like yeah and
You always joke about what you're doing now.
I know, but like it's funny how the roles have reversed somewhat. I think it's because I'm really sensitive to what I'm saying because I'm ultimately culpable for whatever happens on this podcast.
Yeah, I don't give a shit about me.
But you guys are like, yeah, fuck it. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Beep. Yeah. Beep. Yeah. Beep. Oh, I see this chair. I forgot I broke this fucking chair.
I mean, I probably used
it still works, but
I used it for a ladder, so it's fun.
Yeah. Oh shit.
Whoa.
We were talking about the Appendix N book club just now, and like towards the end of last time, just like all of the books that inspired Gygax and stuff. And you were talking about how Jack Vance should have sued his ass.
I mean, he literally says prismatic spray.
That's so funny.
It's called excellent prismatic spray.
Are there more instances where you're just like, dude, totally had a case?
I can get it. I got it highlighted.
You should get it.
I mean, they used
on my
hobbits for the longest time, and
He
they
did.
did get sued.
Yeah, they did. And then he's like, oh, halflings. Halflings.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tolkien sued the shit out of him. It's really funny when you think about it that, like, it's like, yes, I get there's a difference, Gary, between things inspiring you and then having a list of, here's the shit I stole from. You know what I mean? Like, it's pretty egregious in some parts.
No, it's pretty fun to read this so far.
That's
some
cool.
like old writings that can be a bit. That's why I read the more nonfiction, which is like made to be clear about information. So fiction could be like super abstract. So sometimes I like reread things a lot. I'm like,
dude, I love purple prose, like where you can tell that the people that are writing it, they're just fans of like language. Of like, this sentence just sounds so cool or sounds so evocative, you know.
So Fandale's gyrator spell.
Gyrator spell.
You lift a person and you gyrate them to death. So he picks up a demon. No, he picks up some woodland creature.
Right.
She's like, hey, tell me what you need to know so you can die faster. Because he throws him up, he's gyrating, and he throws him at birds in the sky. The birds start eating him. So he's like, all right, fine, I'll tell you. So he's like, cool, I got what I need to know. So he gyrates him to death. So he spins and limbs blow up.
It's like the motorcycle trap in Jigsaw.
Yeah, but magic.
Yeah, but it's magic. Yeah, but there's no trap part. It's just Elminster just laying some motherfucker out. It's terrible. That's a very specific spell.
I think
too.
that's called that might be still around. It's called Spin to Win.
Spin the win.
Then there's
He predicted it.
This is when a demon's coming up at him, a different demon. Marzaran took off his spell, if such were, and uttered a spell of his own. All the valleys was lit by streaming darts of fire, lashing in from all directions to spit Thrain's blundering body in 1,000 pieces. This is the excellent prismatic spray. Many colors, stabbing lines. Thrain was dead almost at once. Purple blood flowed from the countless holes where the radiant rain had pierced him.
Man, prismatic spray is a lot beefier in Jack Vance's world. It's like literally shooting through you.
It's a pain bow.
Yeah, pain.
And then water to go underwater is the charm of untiring nourishment. So some lady does it before, and he does it before. He goes into the water.
It's got like the naming scheme. You know what I mean?
That's what I'm saying, like blatant naming scheme, which makes sense because in this world it's described as the dying earth, as in all of these spells and all of these books used to be known, and everyone could just do them. But now the wizards can only do like 4 at a time, and most of it's gone.
That's how it is in DCC. There's it's a very specific number. It's like 36,000 something hundred and something known spells, but
that's probably exactly from Jack Vance.
That probably is
because it's literally there used to be known spells. Everyone was having a grand old time.
Yeah,
and then I think it was unspecified, but just Earth is dying. There's ruins everywhere, and there's wizards that are trying to barely get the last of it.
Now, see, at least Goodman Games has the excuse of stealing stuff from Jack Vance because they literally got permission from their estate to publish a box set, which is going to be coming out in a couple months. So after we're done reading the books, that's part of the reason why I wanted to read Dying Earth, because the box set for DCC is coming out. And then I want to read Empire of the East, because I have that source book. And then I want to read Fritz Lieber, the Fafford and the Grey Mauser shit. Yeah, because there's a Lankmar box set that I have. So it's like... It's funny because Goodman Games is going through the proper channels to rip off Appendix N readings and stuff, whereas Gary was just like, I wonder how much of this shit I can slip under the fucking radar, you know?
He just cobbled it together.
Yeah.
That he did.
I mean, is the person that can give you the information the greatest is usually who profits most in history.
Dude, that guy, Gary, the more I read about Gary, the more it's like he's literally the Walt Disney of RPGs. Yeah. Like, he totally fucked over Dave Arneson. Yeah. D&D, apparently he just stole from everyone. And then when AD&D came out and was a success, he just went to California for the D&D TV show and just did coke all the fucking time.
But he still had the grace to, step down and play with people.
He did. Yeah.
The whole time.
He loved the game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
He just also knew how to make money from it.
Right. Which I guess that's where it kind of gets gray, right? Because is he a ruthless pioneer, or is he just the first guy who really did it to the scale that he did?
Both.
You know? Yeah, that's true. Both. It's probably a little of column A and column B, because from what I understand, he was a really cool guy, to hang out with and play with and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It sucks that I got into all this. It sucks that I wasn't a little bit older, because it wasn't that long ago that he died.
Yeah.
It's if I was born maybe I don't know 5 years earlier or something like that, I could have been in one of those games. And that's not enough to be I wish all this stuff changes so I could play a game with Gary Gygax. But to I try to cobble together forum entries or videos or stuff of things where he has run games, because it's that's the guy.
Yeah.
If you're going to learn how to run a game of D&D, that's the guy you learn it from. You know what I mean? He knows exactly what his vision is supposed to be. So it's I'm fascinated. It's like how you're reading a book and you're I want to know what the author really meant by this, but you can. And not only that, but he can literally hold your hand while you write something that's like what he wrote.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? it seems like it was really cool. He apparently posted on Dragon's Foot and shit all the time too. Like there's a tons of forum archives and stuff where he would just be on forums answering questions and shit.
I remember when he died, there were loading screens in memory in Neverwinter Nights. Like the community came together, and there was a lot of different servers they had it.
Fuck.
So just every few loading screens, you'd see Gary.
That's so cool. That's really fucking cool. I don't know if they got the statue of him up in Lake Geneva. Because I know they were
In Geneva?
Yeah, that's where Lake Geneva is where he.
Well, yeah, he's
Lake
great at
Geneva.
conventions.
Yeah.
Like Geneva.
So why not Geneva?
Yeah. What? Yeah, the Geneva Convention.
Yeah.
That's what GaryCon is the Geneva Convention. Yeah.
I just like the idea of like, oh man, music was better back then. I wish I lived back then. You're like, I want to play with a nerd.
yeah.
I wish I was alive to play a couple games with a nerd.
I want to be in the mountains, starving myself, so that I might better understand the master's teachings. Like I want to prostrate myself before him, and
You never got the chance to write something really good and have him steal it.
that's true.
Yeah, there you go.
That's also true.
You're like, wow, Gary, I have all these really good for a thing called track marks. And then and then he's like, really? And then like a year later, he posts, he'll have your exact thing.
Right? Yeah. At the same time, too, it's kind of like, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure in the spirit of the game and the DIY nature of it, it's cool and stuff like that. But it's literally like if I was like meeting him at a convention, I'm like, oh, Gary, I'm doing this thing. I'm taking like BXD. You ever watch The Wire? Yeah, I'm doing that, but in D&D. And he'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? What's going on?
And then he would do it.
And then he'd steal it. He'd make some like Legendary Adventures supplement or whatever. He did a whole other RPG after he left TSR. It's a Legendary Adventures, spelled with a J. Legendary.
Legendary.
I always saw that logo. I'm like, it's fucking stupid.
Is it French?
No,
Legendary.
It's Legendary. No, he tried to like recapture the fame of AD&D. That's the ultimate thing, right? Is he was stealing from his own thing. After he got kicked out of TSR, his own company. He was stealing from his own company.
I mean, stick with what you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, you read that shit, you like look at that, you look at the character sheet, you're like this is just AD&D but with more steps, like.
Yeah.
But apparently, there was one other. The more and more that we learn about like how Gary Gygax completely just fucked over Dave Arneson, like the guy who he wrote D&D with. Apparently, Blackmore wasn't just a supplement to D&D. Apparently, that was like the prototype RPG.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So I didn't know it was its own. It was its own progenitor thing.
OG. And like actually, I think Gary he started playing like wargaming. Mostly, it started off just as chainmail,
right?
Basically, until one of their other friends came over and described basically how they'd been doing role playing, and they thought to just mix the two together. And then once he mixed the two together, that's where Gary saw the full package of what this could become.
Right. He was the one who was ruthless enough to get it to market.
Yeah,
which.
I mean, it could have died out just as a group of friends and the secret little thing that people did too.
Can you fucking imagine?
Yeah. That would have been horrible.
That would have been horrible. I mean, that's almost why I feel like you have a duty to creatively get what you need to get out there because you have people like who was one, like it wasn't Virginia Woolf someone who like all of her writing was like never looked at all, and then they found it after she was dead. And it's
that
like,
wasn't
holy shit,
Virginia.
she
That
kicks
was,
ass.
Mary, not Wollstonecraft. Emily something.
Oh fuck! I know. I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
Dickinson.
Yes,
Emily Dickinson.
Yes, yeah.
She was just a super, like, in the house, didn't do anything except be in the house.
Right.
Yeah.
Because there's three levels to it is what I'm talking about. Because first of all, there's your personal satisfaction of, okay, I did the thing, it's out there, I've done the thing, I've accomplished the thing, I have the thing. And then there's the fact that, okay, maybe far down the line, whenever someone happens upon your stuff, maybe they can get some use out of it or whatever. But then there's also, it's like, what happened with D&D. It's like, this completely transformed everything. And regardless of whether or not you're here for it, isn't it worth not just for your own satisfaction, but for that just infinitesimal chance that what you made would positively influence so many other people.
No.
No,
Absolutely not.
no, fuck them.
Yeah, fuck 'em.
This is my shit. Yeah,
How dare you?
Antinatalism.
I burn every copy of my manuscript with me. Yeah,
I told a lot of artists, like, you always hear about, like, really self-conscious artists who, burn my stuff when I die, and then, of course, they don't.
yeah,
That happens all the time.
Yeah, also they're fucking dead. What do they care? You know what I mean? Are you so self-conscious that in the state of non-existence you would still care? You still give enough of a shit? You're that
I
embarrassed?
forgot who it was, but yeah, it was like, I'm sure it's a couple people that are like, yeah, burn my stuff when I'm dead. And you're like,
right.
no.
There are people who are like, there are authors who were like, don't release any of my unfinished stuff, which I get that, because it's like, this is stuff that if it didn't get out there, it didn't get out there for a reason, sure. But yeah, it's like my whole body of work, I don't want any of it out there. It's like, that seems selfish, you know what I mean, in a way. No?
No.
And you're just not going to qualify.
Yeah. You want to say something?
No.
No. Okay.
Not in agreement with you.
No one has no one has the right to read anything. So
Nobody has the right to read anything?
yeah.
I think that's a bold statement
Thanks,
to make.
Fahrenheit 451. Like,
Yeah.
fucking-
Oh, I haven't read that, but yeah, probably.
You haven't read Fahrenheit 451?
No.
Book sucks. The dude.
What do you think
the
about
dude literally
1984?
Wrote it in like a week at a library, and then it shows. But
What do you think about 1984?
it's okay. I mean,
Wow, that's literally 1984.
Yeah.
what sucks about 1984 is that people always co-opt like his message when the dude was like a democratic socialist. Yeah, like so. But like, I don't know. You read it, and it's like at the time it was pretty revolutionary and stuff like that. But like now it just feels really contrived. Like, there's truth in it, but like you can say that about like literally anything.
What about Brave New World?
I never read Brave New World.
Oh, okay, people like that.
What about the Hungry Caterpillar?
I thought you were gonna say the hungry.
You could have said
Hunger
that
Games.
drunkenly too. You're like,
Hungry Caterpillar.
That book slaps.
I don't like no one references
it's
that for
a hard
1984.
critique of consumerist society.
Is it?
In a way.
He's just
I
saying.
mean, you could. Yeah,
Kind
I
of,
could
yeah.
see you interpreting that way. But do you think the author was like? The author was probably like, "Who fucking
The author stormed the Capitol
what? Did he?
in Brazil. I'm making this up.
Okay. That would be
I'm
so
not bad,
funny
okay.
if it's like it's like a news story. It's like the author of Hungry Caterpillar was seen storming
Extreme
the Capitol.
anarchist.
Far right extremist author of the Hungry Caterpillar stormed the Capitol today.
That's probably the 70s. Anyways, yeah, I guess I don't know if it's a right for anyone to read anything you made.
No. I'm just saying.
You're saying if it's ready to publish. I mean, you have a lot of qualifiers.
What I'm saying is like if you were doing your duty, you almost have a duty to if you have an idea that you need to get out there to do it, regardless of who actually ends up seeing it, even if that duty's just to yourself. But like by extension, it's like, fuck, man, contribute to the lore of humanity, contribute to our body of work. You know what I mean? It's like, you've got something to get out there, get it the fuck out there. It's not that people like have the right to like take that from you, but it is like if you're working on something, get it going.
Minecraft Part 2.
Who's writing that now? Is that your creative contribution?
Gotta get it out.
Gotta get it out.
Halfway through. Now it's time to bring it up.
I was actually going to ask, because we already know I've mentioned track marks like occasionally throughout the podcast. That's going to be my thing. But like, what are your guys's? Or I know you've got some things in the works for things you want.
I've got lots of things that are started.
Yeah.
Maybe won't ever be finished.
Yep. Yeah, I feel that.
But yeah, I mean, Risen Seas is probably my biggest project.
Yeah.
But also don't feel like I've matured into being able to write it the way I need to at the moment. So I'm writing a whole bunch of different projects.
You are doing a lot of like...
It's strictly an Echo thing he's picked up about not being mature enough to write something.
Not entirely true. That's something.
That's a very strong Echo influence. You literally like, Echo said, people that are young shouldn't write.
No, I'm talking in terms of my actual like technical ability to write fiction prose. It's something that you have to train yourself into to be able to get a proper flow to be able to do.
Yeah, flow's everything. Yeah.
It's like a job. I mean, we were talking before about how Brandon Sanderson treats that whole fucking thing like a job.
Yeah.
I mean, there is something about I think that is definitely true of me. Is there's the reason why it's taken so long to even get anything out is because I keep being in a state where it's like, no, I can't pull this off yet.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's a pretty mature. That's a sign of just knowing yourself and like what you're capable of is to know that, you know, I don't know. On one hand, it's like good to be like, okay, I'm not ready for this idea yet. I'm gonna work at other things. But on the other hand, you have that thing where it's like, just get it the fuck out there so you can move on.
Oh yeah, that's what gets pages read.
Yeah.
Just many times I'll skip into a different idea, try a different approach, right from a different perspective. And then that is sort of a refresher almost. I keep training the same skill, but with a different mental mindset. And then upon returning to like Risen Seas and trying to rewrite sections of that, it's much easier to pick up like how I could have connected things easier,
right?
How I can make it flow better, how I could expand upon a part or shorten some.
Would you say that like? So are you actually like hopping around within your setting, like doing different spectrum stuff?
I am doing some cheating because my setting's pretty big. So like for instance, I'm still writing that the story of our Burning Wheel game.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, doesn't have many elements at all of my setting, but that's pretty easy to put into a small enclosed space and have it just technically a part of and influenced by, but on its own legs, it's a completely different story, different approach, different mood.
That's the interesting thing about writing it from like a mythos perspective, right? Is that if you have this grander thing that you're doing, like I'm doing Visceria, like there's a lot of different track marks. Is a very small, a couple years worth of events that happen in one city.
Yeah,
like there's still a whole other thing, but like because you're writing within a mythos, you can kind of like let me put it this way: there's authors who've written like some long form shit, and you can go back in their bibliography and you can see like, oh, they originally released it as a short story that kind of had some elements and sometimes kind of didn't.
Yeah.
It's like you're always like, you have this big like stew and you're always throwing stuff in, and it might not necessarily be the thing that you're going to serve, but it's got all the elements there. And if you need to scrape some numbers off here and make like a thing here, I don't know if I mean, that's
what Sanderson does too.
Yeah.
In writing his big books, focusing on main characters with multiple arcs through a plot line, he'll also then have interludes where it's just a completely small separate story about just someone else trying to deal with their own problems somewhere else in the world.
Right.
But then what he does is he'll have these short stories and these snippets, and he'll then have it's its own unique thing. It's like a nice visit, and then you're returned back to whatever the main storyline is until you find out that that's important.
Yeah.
Like several hundred pages later or several books later.
Maybe because later on he decided, oh, I have that little vignette that I'm going to flesh out.
I mean, he thinks 10 years ahead.
But it's not even vignettes in some sense. He lays down entire fundamental rules within his setting that, because that story isn't ever picked up, the characters aren't seen again, but the things and themes and hints about how magic works, particularly in this section of the world, ends up expounding upon what you're reading in the full form novels. Right.
Yeah. The question is how he got there, right?
Because I don't fucking know.
Well, I mean, but that's what I'm talking about, like writing from the mythos is you can take any odd idea you come up with and sort of jam it into the mythos, or you can take any little piece of the mythos and just flesh it out into its own story, and eventually you have enough grist, you have enough perspectives, you have enough stuff that you can build a full story out of it. And it might so happen that, oh man, that one short story or this little vignette or this idea I had, I just need to flesh it out a little bit and then put this in because that's actually going to end up, that actually illuminates a very important point.
That's one of the main reasons of never deleting. Even if you
Right.
have a scene that doesn't fit, don't delete it. Just segment it, separate it, keep it in a document somewhere, so that because that one part that you had an idea of that doesn't fit in the rest of your story could just be a budding seed for like a completely different project.
Writing isn't linear.
Not at all.
I think we all. I think so much of like the way that we learn how to write and the way like people are taught to like write, even like how to write a novel and stuff like that. So much is focused around writing linearly when that doesn't seem to be how anyone does it.
Yeah.
You know. So I definitely, I think that's probably what stopped me before, right? It's to the point where I definitely want to hammer out like a setting like Bible and then just start writing some short stories to take place in the world, take some elements of that and like extrapolate that out into game mechanics, get just some core mechanics together so I can start generating content to get more ideas, just approach it from all these different angles that eventually it coalesces into something. Yeah. Even if I'm running games that have nothing to do with the world, stealing shit that we've done in those and then putting them in. It's all part of one greater creative morass, like a miasma of story. You know, you can breathe it, you can smell it, you can you can wave your hand through it. You know what I mean? And that's what's cool about like the type of like collective shit, you know, where it's like we've been playing in games and running in games of each other's for years and years and years. There's no way all of that hasn't had like influences. I would be stupid if I didn't steal Dent for something. You know what I'm saying? Like
I steal plenty of if I can't think of an NPC to use in a section, I can't think of anyone that's important or unique. I just throw a character in that I've done before, or at least aspects of their personality. I'll throw
really
names
good with
in
that.
entirely.
It's funny because you can end up when you're playing in your games, you can always identify which characters those are supposed to be of yours, but sometimes it's like a cameo sort of thing where it's like, oh yeah, it's that guy, but it doesn't. It's obvious that it's like that doesn't really matter that much. But then sometimes it's like a full like, oh, that is that guy. Yeah, that's always interesting too. When it's like that's not just the character cribbed off of him. That's the actual character. Yeah, you know. Yeah. Which I always feel you reserve for like big things when you're like, oh, I'm going to use the whole ass guy, not just.
I've got to like the character enough. That's for one thing. If you're going to spend a long time in someone's head, then you'd better enjoy them, or at least have enough problems with them where you want to see them.
Yeah,
deal with life.
Yeah, you're totally right. Hey, Emily.
Hello.
Hi. No, yeah, you're totally right. I mean, I think that's probably part of why. I think that's a bit of explanation for why a lot of we're talking about creators putting shit out in the world, and probably a lot of the reason why it doesn't end up getting put out in the world is because you think it's like I am going to just do it and it's going to be out there and it's going to be the way it is. It's like you just need to build a tall enough pile of corpses that you can reach the goal. You know, that eventually the pile of corpses crosses some arbitrary line and now you can write a novel.
Sanderson wrote like 12 novels before he ever sold one.
Fuck me.
Which sounds exactly like
8
him.
or 12, yeah.
Which is exactly like him.
Yeah. That dude really wants to write.
He's literally a printer. He's like a printer.
Yeah.
he just sits down and it's like a fucking inkjet. Like he's just thinking into his fucking like
he goes to the
dictation.
cabin, yeah.
Does he have like a cabin that he secludes
Yeah,
himself
he
in?
has a special. I mean, every writer typically has their spot where they'll write. Once you're established, at least. I mean, once you get to those levels, once you're Stephen King, you know where you want to write.
Right? Yeah, yeah. You know, in in the middle of an intersection, curled around a car. Yeah, half gone on mouthwash. Anyway, what's your spot? Is it just?
I mean, it's just down by my computer at the moment. I don't have the best spot.
You do have it tricked out though.
A little bit.
You have tricked it out with stuff.
Jumping in VR helps.
Yeah.
If I'm trying to play with physical motion in a story, I can jump into like Blade and Sorcery.
Right.
And
that's
actually
a good
practice
point.
Those things.
That's a really good point. You can actually be like, what would it be like to use this weapon in this way? Like, what are some considerations that I have to take into account? And then You know, it's almost like in the same way that like artists have references for drawings.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
I mean, you can always just say he stabs him, but people tend to get bored
And then
with that after
agitate.
a while.
Yeah, but why would you do that? Yeah.
Stabs him willingly.
Willingly. What? No.
It's almost like I get more kicks out of just like there's a reason why I hate outlines, right? Is because I've got like the idea all thought out and I like the idea and there it is, and then it's like, oh well, now I have to put it on paper, but I already have the idea. You know,
Yeah.
It's like I've already thought about it. Putting it on paper just feels like I'm retreading it or regurgitating it. You know, that's usually a block for me. I think that's why I don't have more on paper, because it's like I've played around with it so much in my head. And now I'm at the point where it's like if writing is literally kind of just like going through the motions. Oh, I mean, of course I discover things and things change, but at the same time it's like, you know.
Because you're doing the work.
Yeah, that might be
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. As Sanderson would probably say. You're
It takes
doing
work.
the work.
It is work.
Yeah.
It is work. Yeah. And we talked about last time how I don't really consider GMing work, or it never really feels like work, but maybe it should be. Maybe I should put more work.
Yeah, you've been
into games than I
slacking.
do. Yeah. I feel it. I feel that.
We want to see a little bit more initiative around the office.
Oh, yeah. You docking my pay?
No, you put in a lot of work in terms of like technical documents and stuff for your games.
Oh, yeah.
You put in more work than most GMs and DMs that I know.
That's true. I mean, I think a lot of that is just I'm very specific with how I want the system to completely facilitate how I run things. But I am really trying to pivot to, especially on the blog, I'm really trying to pivot to runnable content, not just mechanics.
Yeah.
Just because I switched where I'm hosting my blog over, and a lot of stuff didn't make the cut because I sort of realized I'm like, the only person who's ever going to really use this is me. And should I even be fucking using this? Probably not. Do I use this? No, not really. So I've kept like the core, like systematic foundation of what it is that I do. And now I'm trying to force myself to just build off of that. Like after I improvise games, like I've been improvising a lot of DCC. What I'm trying to start doing is immediately afterwards, I hammer it out into something runnable, which I've done successfully once. I haven't had the opportunity to really improvise something yet. It'll be in like a week or so. But that works, striking while the iron's hot, but the iron isn't always hot.
Yeah, sometimes it's just iron.
Fuck, yeah. Some Riddle of Steel shit, right?
Yeah.
It's about your will. You know, you gotta conquer that shit. You gotta overcome it.
Yeah. You gotta do it.
You gotta do it.
Set a timer or something. Do it.
Oh, fuck. Yeah.
Timers help.
Timers are brutal. I've done that. I've done the whole like timed thing, and it works, but there's something exhausting about it.
I will finish this novel in 10 minutes. Oh, okay.
That's why I use music. It's a timer that doesn't exhaust you and typically influences what you're writing.
Oh yeah,
Do you
I've
stop
got
when the music
playlists.
stops, though? Or you mean it's just
Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes you have, because tracks will change and they'll have completely different themes, and then suddenly the scene takes a different turn. But also helps in that way.
I have started dabbling back into prose again, and I have picked albums that like I'm like, okay, I'm gonna listen to this while I'm writing this, and it's helped. And then I'll write.
Dungeon Synth.
Is it Dungeon Synth? Yeah.
No, not
I write
I've
to
seen
Dungeon
your
Synth.
Bandcamp. It's half Dungeon
Oh,
Synth.
fucking yeah, it's half Dungeon Synth. I have
More than that.
so my Dungeon Synth playlist, which is a shuffle playlist, which isn't all of my Dungeon Synth, is 4 days, 12 hours.
Yeah, that makes sense for
Wow.
what you have.
Yeah, so 4.5 days.
Yeah, I've
of
seen his
Dungeon
Bandcamp. It's all mostly just
Yeah.
Dungeon Synth.
It's pretty much
I
entirely.
would go
Dungeon
insane with his music. I would just not. He likes Dungeon Synth.
It's also cheap. Dungeon Synth is usually a lot cheaper than any other types of music.
Yeah,
So it's-
$1 or something.
yeah, I try to obviously chip in a little more than that, but usually like
$1.25.
it's like the more niche you get, the cheaper the music tends to get because it's already hard to sell it to people. You know what I mean? So, but then you have people who are really into Dungeon Synth who are like, if you've got the money and you want to support the genre, then you're just going around to artists being like, here's money for your whole discography. Here you go, here you go, here you go. So it's
the whole discography. Okay, that
right.
makes sense.
Yeah, sometimes like you can buy a whole discography for like $16
Yeah,
sometimes
it's
or
much
whatever,
cheaper.
you know. So for me, because I like the genre and because I've got the money and because it's, you know, a pretty cheap genre, I can afford to support the artists pretty much across the board, which is why I have, you know, 178 Dungeons and albums in my collection.
Secretary, can you give me all the Dungeons today? Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
That's
yeah, just a button you press. Yeah,
I need to get my Dungeon synth.
Clear my schedule for the next 4.5 days.
Yeah, that's what it
Daddy's
sounds like.
got some alone time.
I'm sitting in my office chair, like I'm in my executive's office in my cowl.
Yeah.
It's dark and there's just Dungeon synth coming out from like just nowhere. The secretary comes in and is like, "Sir, I bought that Dungeon today," and I wordlessly pull out a sword from like under the desk. She's like, "Oh, okay." Forgot 4.5 days. Yep.
4.5 days, yeah.
I have food in there. Like I'm ready. I'm
Stocked.
Yeah,
I could see Dungeon
stocked
synth
up.
being good for writing because
Oh, it kicks ass.
yeah, because it's not like you're changing that much many moods, are you?
No, it
can.
usually sticks to
There's
sticks to the same.
There's a lot of different moves, and there's a lot of subgenres of Dungeon Synth too. That depends on like because you've got like the traditional, like definitely like epic but forlorn stuff, and then you've got like the medieval town music.
Oh
and
yeah,
then you've got
yeah.
like
There's a
guess so.
difference.
I guess I
there's
don't know it.
variation.
I
there's a
saw
ton
400 of them, and
variation, yeah.
all the album covers are black. So I was like,
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I jumped around. I'm like, I don't know where to go from here. There's so much of them.
I mean, that's why you do have to like. For every like small genre I've gotten in, like niche genre I've gotten into, like whether it's like heavy, like new wave heavy metal or it's like Dungeon Synth and stuff, I always go and look out like, all right, is there somebody who can give me a lowdown on who I should be listening to first and why? And usually you'll find that sometimes they'll have charts, sometimes they won't, sometimes they'll just be like
the charts.
posts, yeah, the charts or the posts that'll be like, you know, here's the essential things, or usually if you just read up on the history of the genre, you can usually pick out some big artists, some big genre movements, stuff like that.
I found that,
and then after you've done the back research, and it's like, oh, okay, now I feel like I can navigate through this genre in a meaningful way.
True.
So that's usually what I do. If I'm about to get into a niche subgenre, I do my research first so that I'm not, because I know what that feels like to just throw yourself into it and be like, I can't even tell one way from another. All these albums have dudes in corpse paint on them and they're really low res. I don't know what to.
Yeah.
And then you know you're sitting over here like, you know, like I don't know, like you just pick up the knowledge base that you need to. It's not even necessarily that it's like, oh, you need to know everything to be able to appreciate the genre. It's more just so like it's a life preserver, so you're not drowning in this 12-foot pool. You know, you can actually
The 4-day pool.
Like, yeah, the 4.5-day pool. Yeah, the 4.5-minute hallway.
Did you have like specific playlists you do, or you just?
Oh yeah, I use specific playlists depending on whatever I'm writing or whatever.
Is it
getting in
like
the
Lord of
mindset
the
of.
Rings and then Lord of the Rings and then
For the newest thing I have, it's a mix of Lord of the Rings and John Wick. Yeah.
And John Wick,
yeah, it's I need those two moods. And it's not Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson. It's Ralph Bakshi, Lord of the Rings.
Oh, that shit's tight.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
But yeah, I've got different playlists for Risen Seas, for the night when I'm writing. There's a modern story I'm still trying to write sometimes.
The Therapist one.
Oh, that one's as well.
yeah.
I have one specifically for that.
Yeah, fuck yeah. Damn, you have a lot of shit in the works.
I've got like 5 stories that I'm working on.
God damn. You know, I was talking earlier when we came up here that there's a lot of stuff that I'm backing away from a lot of things to make time for the things that sometimes it's hard to tell the difference until you're away from it between things that you're doing for some reason versus things that you're doing just because you like it or you like the people or for its own sake, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to have to use a lot of that time, you know, if I'm really going to get into like track marks or something like that, most of that time will be dedicated to that. You've got so many irons in the fire. I'm like, I don't even know if I would ever have like, if I did that, if I locked myself in a fucking cabin in the middle of nowhere, I still don't know if I could have that much.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, it's just different lines of inspiration. So
It is, yeah.
it's hard. It's hard to be in one constant mood. I find for writing a thorough session of a story.
Right.
So being able to have multiple stories helps for whatever I'm feeling that particular day, whatever sort of ideas,
Yeah.
like come to me as I'm like going about my normal business.
That totally makes sense.
I just imagine Brandon said as I'm walking, go, that's fucking stupid. Because that's what I feel like. He's a nice guy, but like the way how rigid he is, he'd be like, "You're doing what?" And he has like his whole.
No, he's definitely done the same thing. The thing
that
is,
what
the
he does?
difference is he finishes them.
Yeah,
Right.
because that's all he does. Yeah.
Yeah. He was a night night clerk at a hotel. So he worked the night shift and basically wrote his entire time while he worked. And
That's
he worked
cool.
that job for like several years, and he said it was one of the worst times of his life.
But he wrote all that time.
But he had all the free time because it was at night. No,
Yeah, yeah.
The desk was never that busy, so he just wrote.
Man.
I envy that.
So that's how he did it, but also it probably was just like psychically horrible for him.
Yeah, basically.
Just mind
Because he's just constantly putting out book after book and literally getting
know-
rejected
Oh, that's
every
true.
single
Yeah,
time.
because he tried to write so many books.
I was talking all that big shit about getting your shit out into the world no matter what, but
Is it 12?
sounds like that you have to make a lot of personal sacrifice to make that happen, huh?
Yeah, because he said he did 12 of them.
8 to 12. I forget how many actual books that he finished
Yeah,
before.
so full books.
But these are not like a few. This is not simple storylines. He just released Way of Kings Prime, which is the first draft of his book Way of Kings, which is like his magnum opus for the Cosmere setting. And
Fuck.
the rough draft of it, I picked it up because I mostly wanted to read how he started out and the sort of I wanted to see a lot of mistakes.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Because I'd been listening to a whole lot of his lectures and the different rules and things he'd learned. And then going back and just reading a few pages, I mean, it's still amazing caliber. But I found a bigger familiarity with it, with my writing structure as well. I'm like, oh, there's some complicated sentences there that probably don't need to be that complicated, but that's a lot of how I write. So it's almost like a mirror effect. But his rough draft for that is 800 something pages.
Oh,
He says in the foreword, he talks about the difficulty of how he got published and how constantly he'd get rejections for his stories being too long.
yeah.
So he wrote 800 pages of this one story that is only a fragment of the greater story that he always had planned for this. And he just tucked it away and started writing a different one. And he wrote Mistborn, and then he wrote Elantris, and Elantris was the first one that got picked up, and it wasn't like if I'm remembering correctly, it wasn't even like the one he considered as his best. But that's the one that sold, and then he started writing on Robert Jordan stuff, and then got to release. They're like, "Do you have any more books?" Yes, he has plenty. And he then came back and then re-released and rewrote all of Way of Kings. That book is 1,200 pages.
Oh my god.
So he didn't learn that lesson.
No,
He just
obviously
learned
didn't.
how to do it better.
Well, what he learned is get picked up for your other shit, and then you can release the
Then you
shit
hit
that you
him
actually
with
want
the
to
big
release.
books, yeah.
Because maybe that's the point of having that many books in the backlog. It's not necessarily like, oh, I'm going to release all these, but it's like that way when I actually start getting deals, I just have a ton of shit I can put
Yeah,
out there
as a publisher, it's
immediately.
like,
Yeah.
wow, you can just keep this going for a while.
Yeah.
If it's good, that's the thing, is they have to care. People have to care.
Man, this is all like I haven't thought about like seriously writing creatively in forever, and I'm starting to think about it again now that like the opportunities are opening up. Like I don't feel like I need to do the things I need to keep doing the things I was doing. Like I feel like I can move on and do other shit, and I really think that we have a leg up on people with the fact that we're into role playing games.
Oh, yeah.
Because the amount of like not only the amount of shit that just happens at the table that you're able to steal, but like honing it's like a whetstone. Like if we're talking about storytelling, if we're talking about sitting down and writing being an actual fight, which to me it actually fucking feels like, to play RPGs and to improvise stuff and to play with new characters and to come up with story hooks and to plan stories and stuff, that's like keeping that shit sharp.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's even easier when you sit down and just hammer something out. it's all really, I don't know. Everything's taking it's taking on a romantic hue. Like it's all very much to me now, just like in this moment, just like this shit is fucking cool. I want to do this shit. I want to make it happen.
I mean, it definitely
You know.
flexes both sides of writing. Being a player, you're stuck in one main perspective. You follow your goals, your needs. You respond to your environment. As a player, you are in the mind of writing the main character. As the dungeon master, you are having to match the story pacing and the technicality of world building and making sure that the world is constantly responding to completely independent individuals that have their own needs and wants and
Right.
don't really care that the whole world might end because there's a MacGuffin.
Sure.
You have to do both when you're writing. You have to constantly be in a mode of trying to think where the story can progress to make things more difficult for the person you're having to make yourself be.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Because I'm so used to... And that's probably why GMing doesn't feel like work to me, is because the players are deciding who's the main character, what's our goal, what's our purpose, how do I feel.
Yeah.
I'm just the one who needs to contextualize all that. And I'm very good at that. But, like, to do both at the same time, it's like using the left side of your brain to do right side of the brain shit.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I'm so used to doing this one thing that it's harder to have to do the other thing. Like to think about character
way, yeah.
motivation and like just like even like side character shit. You know, it's like because you have players who occupy that it's a very important role. You're in the party, but you're not the main character.
Oh yeah, it's my favorite. One of my favorites to be. Being the main character kind of sucks.
Does yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's the main. You get the brunt of everything that's coming for the story.
Right.
I love playing supporting characters because you don't have to embody the entire trajectory of where things are going to go. You just get to add highlights along the way.
You don't have to worry so much about like you are now the theme.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you need to, because yeah, if you're in a main character role, you do have to like reciprocate what the GM's doing too. And if you're a side character, it could be more like, okay, here are the things I want to add. Here are the things I think is cool.
And constantly, a more common thing in role playing games is that constantly everyone is in a sort of main character mode. Everyone just regularly responds what they want, what they need to do directly back to the DM. DM tells them what happens. What there isn't regularly enough of is characters responding based on their own basis to other characters' decisions in a manner that fits the caliber of what a narrative quite needs at times.
I would argue at that point, though, because that's where we're starting to get to... I think the one thing that RPGs have a very hard time handling as a format, or at least most groups do, is like the writer's room vibe. Because, you know, as when we're talking about players and GMs, it's like, yeah, you have to be acutely aware of your stuff. You be acutely aware of the setting. Once you start having to be like, oh, how does my character react to these other characters? Sometimes things happen that the system's not ready to handle. Because at the end of the day, it is a party-based game.
Yeah.
The most role-playing games, as like a medium, assume everyone's on the same team going towards the same goal.
Yeah.
And the games that don't do that end up pretty crunchy pretty quick because you have to end up like... Basically, if we're assuming like you have a role-playing game and it's intended to be designed that way, you have the party, you have the GM, you have the goal, the situation, whatever.
Yeah.
The moment you have each player having their own like forking motivations and stuff like that, now you have to apply that whole structure to each individual person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then it makes things like so much fucking harder.
Or it makes it super easy. Kingdom does it very well.
Right.
Kingdom is constantly players responding to players and budging and reinventing the entire situation or the scope and context of the world at the time, scene by scene.
But it's designed that way.
It is.
It's not... Kingdom is not a traditional RPG.
Definitely not.
GM-less... What you're talking about, like the whole like writer's room feel, that's what GM-less RPGs are for. Because by removing the GM and saying every player is responsible for their own shit, all of a sudden, everyone's the GM. Everyone has to think about what's everyone else doing? What is the context for what we're doing it in? Which is what makes those games really hard to play with some people.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. That'd be cool to play Kingdom again.
Oh, I love playing Kingdom.
I still have my copy.
Ben really wants to play it. I think I've got 2 copies.
Hell yeah.
Ooh.
Well, I've got Kingdom and I have Microscope. Because went and bought Microscope specifically for doing collaborative world building, to actually try to flesh out more of my own setting, just generating people's ideas.
And we did it.
And yeah, we did, and it had a few. Microscope gets wild with how everything just starts fractaling into everyone else's different directions.
Just remember, if everyone is laughing and making fun of your idea, they're going to use it later.
Guess so.
That's
I
true.
did
Yeah.
make fun of nearly everything that Matt ever mentioned, and then it became pretty much the most pivotal, like, embedded world building blocks.
That's fucking awesome. That's how it always works. It's always the
First
joke.
they laugh at you, then they mock you, then they use it or whatever.
Yeah, like naturally occurring goblins.
Which was a misspell.
It was a misspell. He meant to say golems, but he wrote naturally occurring goblins. And the idea of having to specify certain goblins as being naturally occurring,
naturally, yeah.
that evoked such an idea in my head. I'm like, well, what the hell is a non-naturally occurring goblin?
Yeah.
Why are these ones naturally occurring? What does that mean? And yeah.
And I mean, that's the beauty of that shit. I think the problem with Microscope and pretty much every other lame mage game besides Kingdom is I equated GM-less RPGs to writers' rooms earlier.
Yeah.
All the other games besides Kingdom actually make you feel like you're in a writer's room.
It definitely does.
Which kind of sucks, because sometimes you're like, is this just a job now? Like,
Yeah,
what-
that's
Yeah, it
true.
was like that.
Kingdom,
yeah.
you
Yeah.
get to just be your own independent character, and it still feels like you're playing the game.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like, there was another one he did where you basically role play through a family lineage, and it's really cool. It's really interesting. But at some point, you do just feel like, oh man, like we have to do these parts of our process because that's just what you have to do to write something. And it's like, am I getting paid to do this? No. Then why the fuck am I sitting here doing this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it definitely. It's best when it removes as much of the drudgery as possible,
Definitely.
and it gets you straight into the shit.
Dim sound.
Dim sound, yeah.
The era of dim sound.
That sounds fucking metal.
That's what I called it. And he said, what?
Yeah. Every single thing, Matt always says things
I
that I have
said,
to say.
what? Because
Yeah,
my
hold on.
thought,
Excuse me, what did you
the
just say?
thought was that physics broke down and there's pockets of sound that wasn't working because physics doesn't work.
That's fucking intense.
And then I'm like, that doesn't make any damn sense, Matt. And then later I went, oh, but if it was like pockets of divinity or magic just falling apart, then that would.
Oh, and then he
Sure.
used it. Oh.
If you had almost like you have these seasonal periods in Game of Thrones that take things over, but these mega sections of eras where suddenly everyone has to interact differently because the entire audio, like the entire method of hearing has changed. People are constantly whispering, which changes the entire mood of a regular screaming battle.
Sure. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
It's people like Matt and like Nate that you really got to keep your eye on, because they're the ones who are always pulling out the outlandish and sometimes like joke shit. But then it's always that there's like an acute awareness of I don't know. It's like these things that seem ridiculous but are concealing this acute understanding, a holistic understanding of like theme and shit.
He played a wizard in a second edition game that he started off only with the spell Flare, as you do.
Oh, yeah.
And
With
so he
Yeah.
he decided, well, this is useless and my character's kind of useless. So I'm going to collect the entrails of every single creature we kill. And it got to the point where he had this roping pile of entrails that when we finally got down to the boss, I think he tried to cast Flare once. It didn't do well. And then he spent the entire rest of the time just going around the room tying entrail ropes until hampering the party itself in the fight of the boss, but until it became a pivotal mechanism on how we defeated him.
That
First game with Noble.
that is a perfect
SDM.
allegory for how that works. It's just like it's like, why is this here? Why is it getting in our way? What's going on? You almost hate it when it's like, oh, it turns out this is the thing that saves us. It's like, oh, fuck, of course it is. You know what I mean? Like, god damn it.
That was actually one of the first times we came to role playing.
Same day you said.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Oh, Jesus.
Same day.
Was that the same day?
It was
Same
the
day?
same day.
Well, you're going to have to... I've said that a lot of times, so you're going to have to fucking narrow it